Howdy again everyone. The Chinese Viltrox lens company have been busy launching lenses of the most popular focal lengths recently, and their 24, 35, 50 and 85mm autofocus lenses have all offered good value for money and are available on various camera mounts. Now they're getting a little more ambitious with this ultra-wide angle and very bright aperture offering for Fuji X cameras, the Viltrox AF 13mm f1.4 STM aspherical ED-IF. I'll put the lens's price down in the description and pin it to the top of the comment section for you. I'd like to thank Viltrox very much for sending a sample of this lens to me for testing, although as usual this is a totally independent review, and I'll put a price for the lens down in the description and pin it to the top of the comment section. I don't know the price yet. One of my many favourite things in the world are wide-angle lenses with very bright maximum apertures, so I was delighted when Viltrox offered to send me an early copy of this little monster. Even on an aps-c camera, like all of those on Fuji's X-mount system, 13mm is an ultra-wide angle, being the full-frame equivalent of about 20mm, an ultra-wide angle one, but not so wide that your subjects are pushed away into oblivion, or that it's difficult to compose your images. I love this focal length, and the very bright maximum aperture of f1.4 makes it ideal for shooting in dark situations, or even for getting out of focus backgrounds, which always look particularly awesome when shooting at wide angles. No matter how its image quality turns out, this deserves to be a lens that attracts some real attention. This lens's build quality is excellent. Viltrox are at the top of their game here again. The lens is tough and metallic, but not too heavy, and it has a really nice finish to it, even down to small things like the writing on the barrel being engraved properly into the body. The lens mount is made of metal. There's no weather sealing, unfortunately, but there is a USB-C port there for firmware updates, which is always reassuring. Next comes an aperture control ring. On Viltrox lenses, this often turns completely smoothly, but this time it has nice positive clicks to it, every third of an f-stop, which is much more tactile. You're much less likely to accidentally change aperture here. Next comes a very large, metallic, manual focus ring, which turns incredibly smoothly. What's more, the focus motor responds very well to it being turned, better than most Fuji lenses do, actually, in my experience. The further good news is that this lens shows very little in the way of focus breathing. That's useful for video makers too. The autofocus motor is very good as well, turning almost silently and fairly quickly, although it takes just a moment to fully lock onto your subject. The lens comes with a carry pouch and a good quality metallic lens hood. The front filter size is 67mm wide, and the lens does not feature image stabilization. But overall, this is premium build quality and functionality from start to finish. The lens is well thought out and a joy to use, maybe even a little better than Fuji's own XF lenses, I have to say. Alright, let's look at image quality. I'm testing this one on a Fuji X-T3 camera with its 26MP aps-c sensor. At f1.4, we see excellent sharpness and contrast right away in the middle of the image. Over in the corners, we lose a little contrast and resolution, but actually they do look pretty good too, especially considering the bright aperture we're shooting at. Stop down to f2 for a slight improvement in contrast. At f2.8, there's a tiny improvement in sharpness, which at f4 becomes a much bigger improvement, with the corner image quality now looking perfect. The lens stays this sharp down to f8. Stop down as far as f11 or f16, and a little softness begins to creep in due to the effects of diffraction. Overall though, this is a fantastic performance. I never expected such a wide-angle lens with such a bright maximum aperture to be so sharp, especially one that's reasonably priced. Alright, let's see about distortion and vignetting. The following pictures are taken in RAW mode without the normal in-camera corrections you'll expect to see. A small amount of barrel distortion is visible here with a moustache-shaped substructure. At f1.4, image corners are very dark, unsurprisingly. Stop down to f2 or f2.8 to see them brighten up a little, but they never get much brighter than this if you don't use in-camera corrections. The lens's minimum focus distance is 22cm, which is decently close for dramatic images of smaller subjects. The further good news is that close-up image quality remains very sharp, straight from f1.4, and stop down to f2 for it to get just a little bit sharper again. Now, let's see how the lens performs against bright lights. It's a slightly better performance than average here. Flaring patterns are certainly visible, but they're not too opaque, and contrast remains pretty good. And while we're working in the dark, let's take a look at chroma levels. Even at f1.4, chroma smearing on bright points of light in the image corners is quite low. Anything that was there is reduced at f2, and stop down to f2.8 for it to be completely gone. Let's zoom out a little now and look for some sun stars. They really begin to emerge at f8. At f11 and f16, they look even stronger, so it's all good news here. Now let's take a look at the quality of this lens's bokeh. Even though it's such a wide-angle lens, you can get autofocus backgrounds here, especially when shooting at f1.4, and they mostly look pretty nice and smooth. It's rare to see any kind of business or outlining. Nice. And finally, related to bokeh comes longitudinal chromatic aberration. At f1.4, its presence is very visible, yellow in the foreground, blue in the background. At f2, it mostly clears up, and at f2.8 it's pretty much gone. Overall, well, it didn't take much testing time with the Viltrox 13mm f1.4 for me to quickly become very impressed, not just with the lens's spectacular build quality and decent optics, but with just how useful it is and fun to shoot with. A 13mm f1.4 lens is literally unique on the Fuji system, and I had a blast using it, and it could be particularly useful for astrophotography too. My conclusion is simple: it's an excellent optic and my favourite Viltrox lens to date, and in my book it's one of the most highly recommended lenses on the Fuji X system today. I can't get enough of it. Okay, that was fun. Well, I love putting these lens reviews together for you all. Not only is it fun, but I know it's useful to know how the latest optics are performing. If you find these reviews helpful and you'd like to support the channel, then check out my Patreon page down in the description below. Supporters receive all kinds of exclusive content that I make just for them, and it'll no doubt make you feel all warm and fuzzy inside to be so generous. Thanks to everyone who's already supporting and making a huge difference, and ciao for now.